All right, you enjoy woodworking. You're tired of the office grind. You don't like your boss. You want to work for yourself. I'm going to show you how to do that right now to go from just being a little hobby woodworker to making a business out of it, how to make money, and how to make it your new career where you can be your own boss. Let's get into it. All right, so clearly you are interested in woodworking and making it your new career because you have some sort of passion for it. Otherwise, you wouldn't have clicked on this video. So let's talk about how you do that. The first thing you need to know is it's not a get rich quick thing. Woodworking takes time. It takes time to build up that clientele. It takes time to start really making money off of it because you're not going to start out selling these big giant pieces worth thousands of dollars because you're new and people aren't going to be willing to pay a new guy to do that. So first, let's talk tools. I assume that you've done at least a little bit of woodworking if you're going to try to start a business up. Let's say you haven't. Let's say you're brand new, you like the idea of woodworking, you want to see if you can make a business out of it. You're going to need some basic tools to get started. If you've got nothing and you've got a small budget to start with, there's a few things you can do. You can get started for a couple $100s, right? I'd say at a minimum. Ideally, you get bigger and better tools, but let's say you're starting out, you're a teenager, you just want to kind of get things moving and you don't have a lot to start. Here's what I would definitely get like a must have. Number one, you want a circular saw. That's going to help replace what would be a table saw, miter saw, all these other things that are definitely more useful if you can afford them. But if you can't, you can get that stuff done with the circular saw, mainly by setting up a whole bunch of jigs. So a circular saw, you can get those as cheap as 45 bucks at Lowe's, right? So not too bad. I'm talking you're going on a real thin budget. Start with a circular saw. It's not going to break the bank. You're going to have to get an extension cord too because it's going to be plug in and you're going to have to run that thing all over the place. Second thing you got to have a drill. Now, in an ideal world, you have a drill and an impact driver and a hammer drill and a couple other things. But you can get pretty much all that stuff done with just a drill. It's just not as efficient and as ideal. So a drill, again, you can get those fairly cheap, about 45 bucks. It's not going to be the highest quality, but it's going to get you started. And that's all we're trying to do right now is get you going, right? The other thing you're going to definitely have to have is some clamps. Now, you could spend a ton of money on clamps if you're not careful. I mean, look at all those clamps right there. I like clamps. You never seem to have enough clamps, but if you're just getting started, you want a couple of simple squeeze clamps. Those are usually like $1 or $2. You're gonna need a couple of clamps big enough for you to glue pieces up. Those are gonna need to be at least 3 or 4 feet. Bar clamps are a little bit cheaper if you can get a hold of them, but I'd say minimum you want about 4 clamps, long clamps, and then a handful of the little squeeze clamps. Those are helpful for when you are doing your cuts and you need to clamp some straight edge pieces. So that leads us to another thing. You need something that's straight edge. A level works, a long straight piece of metal works. You really don't want wood because wood can move a little bit. But if you can get, for example, this has all been sprayed over and everything, but it's basically a giant 6-foot ruler, right? It's made out of metal. It's not super thick, but it can act as a good straight edge for when I'm making long cuts with circular saw if I don't have a track saw. So a level, you get 2 things in one because you're going to have to level things off, but those can get a little bit pricey. Those straight edge metal pieces like that, you can usually get those for 10 to 20 bucks depending on where you're going. The other thing you have to start, you need a power sander. You could try to sand things by hand, but man, that's going to take you forever, and it's really just not as efficient. You're going to save so much time and have a better quality finish by getting a power sander. You can get those fairly cheap as well. I've seen them as cheap as about $35. So you don't have to break the bank, but eventually you're going to want to upgrade to a nice good one, preferably a random orbital sander. That's going to help give you a nice smooth finish, give you that circular motion. That's kind of what you're going for. But whatever you can afford, definitely need a power sander. And then finally, a pool saw. A pool saw is going to help you kind of clean things up, make those simple, smaller cuts. Again, this is if we're going on like shoestring budget, we're just trying to get started. These are minimum tools. If you've got a little bit more in the budget, or let's say you already have a good amount of tools already because you've been doing this as a hobby, you're a little bit older, or maybe let's say you got grandpa's tools or your dad's tools. Some things that you would like to have to start would be a table saw for sure, because that's going to be your workhorse. Table saw, you can rip down sheet goods, you can rip pieces, you can build a crosscut sled and do some crosscuts on it. A miter saw is also ideal for chopping things, getting straight, 90-degree cuts, setting up the miter. If you end up doing a little bit of trim work, a miter saw is a must-have. A screw gun makes things a lot easier when you are screwing things in because it's going to give you a little bit more torque. It's meant for driving things in, whereas a drill is really just meant to make the hole. If you put a screw bit in a drill, you're not going to get the right type of torque when it comes to driving something in. So a screw gun or an impact driver would be ideal. The other thing, if you've got the budget for it, get more clamps. Get more clamps. Clamps are huge. I've got all these clamps over here. I don't have enough clamps. I'm telling you, you want clamps of all shapes and sizes because you're always trying to hold stuff together, and it really helps to have a bunch of long clamps, some short clamps, some squeeze clamps. Whatever you can afford, go and get them. And then a jigsaw is pretty helpful, especially if you're working with rough lumber, because it's going to allow you to cut things in half without binding it, because rough lumber isn't going to come square. It's got what it sounds like. It's rough edges. So you're going to have to clean that stuff up. Having a jigsaw to be able to cut those things to a more manageable size. And then that leads us to our other two tools that you would like to have, especially if you are working with that rough lumber, are a planer and a jointer. Those are going to help you clean things up. Going to make your joints a lot tighter, make it a lot smoother on top so you're not spending all day trying to sand things down. It's going to allow you to make all of your pieces the same thickness. The planer is great for that. That allows you, when you are, let's say you're making a table, all those pieces are going to be the same thickness. All those pieces are going to have straight edges. So you've got a nice smooth glue up, which leads to a lot easier and nicer finishing. So as far as starting a business, those are some of the tools that I'd say you need / would like to have. Now, obviously, like I said, your budget's going to determine how much of that you can actually get right now. Maybe you have some of it already. Maybe you don't have as much to spend. Start with those must-haves and get kind of whatever you can in that would like to have category. Okay, so you've got tools. Now it's time to start building things. Where I would start, especially if you haven't begun, if you don't have much experience when it comes to building, where I would start is I would find something that you could use around your house and start by building that. Build something for yourself, for your spouse, for your parents, something like that. That's going to allow you to get some practice in. And then when you show it off to them, they will then be able to critique you in whatever way you need to be critiqued. whether it's, hey, the finish doesn't look great, this is a little bit crooked, blah, blah, blah. You need kind of that practice and experience of working, building something for somebody that isn't going to hurt your reputation, right? So where I would recommend starting is either more likely like a coffee table. It's kind of a good starting point. It's a nice piece of furniture. It's going to be very visible. A lot of people can come in and look at it, but it's not replacing their dining room table that maybe cost them several $100s or $1,000 or whatever. You are giving them a piece that can be displayed. Other people that come to the house can look at it and say, hey, that looks nice. Where'd you get that? How much was it? Blah, 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 blah. That's what you want to start with, right? So really focus on doing some quality work. Keep the design fairly simple. If you don't have something in your head, there's a million designs online. Go on there, check out some different ideas, pick one, and just try to mimic it, right? You don't necessarily have to change it and make it just yours. Mimic something that somebody else built, and that way you have something to kind of go off of. You can kind of visually break that thing down in your mind, sketch it out. Okay, I'm going to need this much lumber, I'm going to need these pieces, they'll need to be cut like this. A typical coffee table size is about 4 feet by 2 feet and 18 inches high. So it's not a giant piece, and it'll give you time to kind of build it, put a good finish on it, make sure you clear coat it, and just kind of give you some experience, right? That's what we're looking for here is experience, and also take some quality pictures of it, because this is going to be the beginning of your portfolio, right? When you are advertising and starting this business, people want to see what have you done, right? What have you built? Can I trust you to build something for me? Well, you need to have something that you can show them. Hey, I built this, I built that, I can do this. That's going to kind of give them confidence in hiring you to build their piece, right? So take your time, make it look nice, get some good pictures of it, make sure that it's displayed correctly. You don't want pictures of it sitting in the garage. You want it in a living room where people can visualize, hey, this would look good in my living room, right? So build something, take your time, make it look how you would want it to look, how you would want to display to a customer. Either put it in your house, give it to a friend or family. You're not charging anybody for this piece, right? This is put it under your marketing budget, right? Because you need to get your name out there, and you need to have, like I said, a portfolio to show in order to get that started, right? And then take those good quality pictures. Once you've done that, you're then going to put together yourself a social media page for your business, right? This is not for you, whether you've got a social media page, doesn't matter. You need a social media page for your business. That's where people are right now, and that's how you're going to get your name out there is through social media, especially without having to spend a ton of money, right? If you try to market the old-fashioned way in today's world, you're going to spend a bunch of money trying to do that. Social media is a good way to do free marketing. You can also do paid ads, but you can get your name out there pretty simply by just using social media the correct way. All right, so that leads us into the next thing, and that is now we're actually looking for clients, right? So we've built something. Ideally, build maybe 2 or 3 things just so you've got a little bit of range that you can show off. Even if, let's say, you did the coffee table, maybe you built a dining room table for yourself, maybe you did like a shiplap wall or a drop zone, a couple of different things that are going to show some of your range, show people, hey, I can do this, right? And then you can start moving on from there. You're going to take your social media page. Make sure you have a Facebook page and Instagram for sure. I know a lot of people are on TikTok, but I don't know how much business you're actually going to get from TikTok in this industry, right? There are people that make a ton of money on TikTok. I'm not saying you can't. I'm just saying you're looking to get clients locally, build pieces for them, and deliver it to them. You're not necessarily going to find that on TikTok, right? Where you're going to find that is Instagram and Facebook. Facebook in particular, you got to understand who your clientele is going to be. Your clientele is not going to be young 20 something. It's going to be the older, I'd say middle age, with either young to, middle school age kids or older. These people tend to be more established in where they are living. They tend to live in these neighborhoods that are a little bit more high end. They're not in apartments, right? They are in their house. They know they're going to stay there for at least a good period of time, if not for the rest of their lives. They're the ones that are going to invest in custom furniture because they want it to fill out their house where they think they're going to stay. The 20, 30 something year old who lives in a condo downtown probably isn't going to be the one to hire you for this job. It's going to be the one that lives in the neighborhood in the suburbs that makes a little bit more money, that has a family, or at least is established in the area and plans to stay there for a long period of time, right? So that's who we're aiming at. Those people are still on Facebook, and where you really find them and get your name out there is in those neighborhood Facebook groups. That has been huge. You have the community Facebook groups, like the rants, raves, and reviews, or, such and such cities, word of mouth, all that kind of stuff. Look for those groups, join whichever ones you can, and then when people ask the question, they say, hey, I'm looking to have a custom coffee table made. Who have you used? That's where you got to put your name in there. Have your business name set up, have everything, dialed in as far as you need your business name, you need your business account, bank account, you need, the business license, insurance, all that stuff set up, ready to go, because a lot of them are going to ask if you're licensed and insured. There is no special license for custom furniture, so you don't have to stress about that, but you do want a business license and be a business entity because that's going to help protect you if anything were to go wrong. Register with your state, pay the whatever the fee is. It's usually, somewhere around $100. Get yourself a business license, find some liability insurance, get that all set up. That way, if they get drunk and dance on the table and fall off it, they can't sue you and take all your stuff, right? So, have all that set up. Get in those neighborhood Facebook groups. Put your name out there, right? Eventually, as you pick up more and more clients, they will start recommending you after you've done a good job for them. But it's going to have to start with you recommending yourself, or your friends or your family recommending you, because that's how you're going to get your opportunity, right? They're going to ask for a quote, take your time, estimate it out correctly. I have a whole video on pricing. I'll put a link to that down in the description. Go check that out. It's very helpful. I take a real deep dive into it, and it's really going to help you not make those same mistakes that I made when I was starting out and ended up kind of struggling to go paycheck to paycheck. Once you figure everything out when it comes to pricing and you take into account everything you have to, then you have a little bit more breathing room. Check out that video. I go into all the detail. It's very helpful, and it's going to keep you from making some mistakes that I made, because I learned from those mistakes, and now I am much better off. Trust me, you're going to want to watch that video. So, you put your quote out there. Hopefully they take it. Not everybody's going to take it. Some people are going to think you're overpriced. Some people will say, wow, that's super cheap, I'll take it. It all depends on what type of person it is, right? We're not going for the super cheap client. although we may have to kind of go start there and work our way up to a little bit more higher price clients. You want to price it out to where you are taken care of and the client's taken care of, right? You don't want to put yourself in a bad position just to get a client, right? Price it out correctly. If they say no, that's fine. Don't try to cut yourself down in order to get the job. Just move on and get the next client, right? Because if you know your numbers, you have to stick with your numbers. Don't let them move you down, because that's how you get yourself in trouble, right? So know your numbers, stick to those numbers. If they say no, move on, right? So you've got your client. Somebody finally said yes. Make sure you're using as high quality materials as you can afford that you've priced into it, right? It's easy to want to get started with construction grade lumber. I did that too. Farmhouse tables, they're popular. You do them, but in the end, you can't charge a whole bunch because you're not using high quality materials. Use the high quality materials. Learn with that stuff. That's going to allow you to become a better woodworker quicker by working with better materials. You also need to make sure you account for that in your pricing. Use good materials, and then as the jobs get done, finish those jobs, make sure the customer's happy. Once all that's done, you've got your final paycheck from them. Go ahead and use some of the profits that you've got and invest it in some better tools if you don't have what you need, right? If you don't have a joiner and you need a joiner, let that job help pay for the joiner, right? That gets you a little one step closer into being a little bit better woodworker, because now instead of trying to joint something on a table saw, which it can be done, it's a lot easier to run it through a joiner, right? If you put it in the price to give yourself some profit, you can reinvest those profits back in the business by getting bigger and better tools, right? Let's talk about one other thing that we kind of skipped earlier, and that's where you're going to work. Now, depending on where you are located, it may or may not be as simple as just working out of your garage. If you've got a garage to work out of, use it. You're already paying for it. Just clean it up every day if you don't have money for a bunch of dust collection, and use it. That's a garage is where a lot of people get started. It's where I got started. That's where most woodworkers start. If you don't have a garage, as long as you still have a yard, you could do the work in the yard. It's just you're gonna have to account for about half an hour or more at the beginning and end of every day for setup and tear down, because you don't want to leave stuff in the yard, right? So that's not ideal, but it's still better than paying for a space. Let's say you're in a bigger city and you have neither. You don't have a yard, you don't have a garage, you have your tools, minimal tools. Look for one of those like maker spaces. Those tend to be in bigger cities. Usually you can find a spot where you essentially are going to rent time in that space, and that will allow you to have access to certain tools that they have there, some of the bigger stuff. You don't have the big commitment of renting out a space for yourself. You're not, taking a shop and having to build it all out. So those maker spaces are great. You're usually only going to find those in the bigger cities, but those are the people that are more likely to be space challenged anyways, because you're in a big city, right? So a maker space is a good spot to go get access to the big things that you need without having to invest. Instead of spending the money on the tools, you're spending the money on the space that you get to rent. So you're renting out those tools. So that's a good option for those of you that are in big cities. They usually call them maker spaces. They may call them something else, but essentially you're renting space and access to all these tools that can make your jobs a lot easier. I don't know what their rules are as far as storage of projects. If you have to bring it home back and forth every day, or if you can leave it there, that would depend on the place that you're renting from. but it's a good option for those of you that don't have a garage or a yard to work out of. All right, so now we got our tools, we got our space, we've got our social media put together, we've picked up a client, we kind of have things moving. You need to kind of rinse and repeat for a while as far as checking social media, putting your name out there as much as possible. Obviously, every time you finish a project, take some good pictures. You're adding to your portfolio. You want to build up that portfolio. Eventually, you're going to want to get a website so that people can contact you through the website. And that'll allow the business to kind of get moving, right? Understand your pricing. The other thing that you want to make sure you do is always take care of the customers, but also follow up with them, right? You should have some sort of contact information for them. You want to kind of check in, usually around like the holiday times where it makes sense to say, Merry Christmas or Happy New Year or Happy Easter a couple times a year. You just want to kind of keep your name fresh in their mind, right? Now, we're not the type of industry that is going to be constantly selling people over and over and over again. You will get repeat clients if you do a good job, but you're not selling them every month, right? Like most of my repeat clients happen probably maybe once a year, maybe every couple years. I've probably had 20 or 30 people that have done more than one job with me, and it's rarely in the same year unless we do it all at once. Some people have the budget to do 2 or 3 projects at the same time. Some people, they need to spread it out. That's however the client wants to work it. But if you are constantly kind of front of mind, like, hey, oh yeah, that guy that built my table, we could use, this little coffee nook. I'd like to have some shelves and stuff done. Or we need a coffee table. Or, thinking about putting a built-in. You want to be kind of front of mind when it comes to all that. And you can do that by make sure you collect their information, put together an email list, and just kind of reach out periodically, right? It doesn't have to be you asking for jobs. It just has to be you making contact. Like I said, use the holidays kind of as your time to reach out. Hey, Merry Christmas. Thanks for being a customer of ours. We're booking such and such time. If you want to get on the calendar for the next project, click this link and set up a time to consult, and we can make things happen. That's going to kind of help keep you. It also helps them remember when their friends ask them, oh yeah, this guy does good work. You should hire this guy, or at least reach out to this guy. That's something that's going to help you with the business continue to grow. And eventually, you can either make the decision whether you want to hire and build the business, or if you want to go a different route and you just want it to be your career. I like building things. I want to build things until I can't build things anymore. There's nothing wrong with that. Try to find another stream of income, because you may be young and enjoying it right now, but your body's going to wear down eventually. So you're going to want to make sure you have some other way to make money off of it, because if you're the only one, then you are the business. Nobody's going to buy your business because you are the business. And if they buy the business, they can't buy you. You can't then retire. It's not going to work. So you need to find another way to create income. Obviously that's going to be years and years down the road. You either build the business, you got to start hiring people, or alternatively, you find a way to turn that into something like what I'm doing here with the YouTube stuff, with Shop Class, which is today's sponsor, Shop Class, that is launching here in January, where I am teaching you how to start woodworking from zero, right? To go from zero to building furniture. It's a very in-depth course, but with short little chapter type pieces that'll show you how to build things. You can go to bringshopclasshome.com and find out more information there. Get registered. If you do it before the end of the year, which is just a couple days, you can save $50 by using the promo code in the link down below. And it's going to be great. I'm finishing all that editing up this weekend. It's going to launch January 6th, and you'll get all the videos, all the build plans, everything you need will be all right there. So bringshopclasshome.com if you want more information about Shop Class. So to wrap things up, building a woodworking business is possible for pretty much anybody. If you follow those steps that we went over, understand it's going to take time. So if you're in a career right now, I would start doing this on the side before I jumped all in. You could build things on the weekend, start with pieces of furniture that doesn't require install, where it's more just a delivery. If you're doing tables, benches, small items that can just, you deliver, you maybe assemble a little bit on site, and that's it. You don't want to have to be like what I do right now with the built-ins and stuff. That requires days of installation, right? So you can't have that and do another job at the same time, right? So that's something you need to make sure that you're aware of. Or you need to have put together yourself a little budget, save some money to give yourself 3 to 6 months to really get this thing up and moving. It takes time. When I started, I was working for another guy in construction at the time, doing remodel type of things. And so I would do that, come home, work on a custom piece, take that piece, deliver it, and I could still, do both until I had enough business to where I could just work for myself, which that's what I've been doing for the last 8 years. So if you want to build a business, a woodworking business in 2025, it is very possible. You are definitely capable if you have the patience. Follow those steps, enjoy it. Leave a comment down below if you have an idea of a step that I may have missed, or if you are going to get started, let me know. I'd love to give you some encouragement. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on Crafted in Florida.